A few hours ago, Raila Odinga, the leader of Azimio, issued a statement. And yes, it's a very big deal. Stay with me on my show today and find out why it is such a big deal. In the statement, Raila Odinga took everybody by surprise, both his supporters and the other side of the political divide, because he weighed in on the current controversy, the current manenos that has shocked so many Kenyans, the sudden demise of lawyer Paul Gicheru of ICC fame, International Criminal Courts at The Hague. I assure you, at the end of my show today, most of you will agree with me that that statement from Raila was very political. And not only that, it gave us a very clear sign of what we should expect politically shortly. Indeed, it confirms that Raila is up to something. This very experienced politician sometimes plays chini ya maji, and that's when you should be most wary. Oh yes, because you don't know where he's going until it is too late. If you're his opponent, that's really what it is. Now, if you're enjoying this video in anticipation already, please remember to give me a like. That will really help me to have a lot of reach, a very wide reach. And also subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber, so that you never miss the content of this channel. Very difficult to find anywhere else. The kind of content that helps anybody to really deeply understand what is going on in Kenya, what's really behind the headlines and the propaganda that is flooding our media these days. It gives you clarity. Therefore, if you're not yet a subscriber, please subscribe. And I assure you, you will quickly move to another level of understanding of the country called Kenya. Now, please also allow me to point you out to a very controversial new book on a Kenyan based in America, a man called Barack Hussein Obama. Actually, President Barack Hussein Obama, who is a previous president of the United States of, although his origins are right here in Kenya, at a place called Kogelo in Luo Nyanza. Oh yes. Now there's a link in the description area below. So make sure you don't get so excited over this show that at the end of it you forget to look for information on that book. Very fascinating stuff. You will find that link in the description area below. Please take a look. Right! Twende kazi. When Raila Odinga speaks, he does not speak for nothing. He does not speak about small matters. He does not speak to build up his image, because we have politicians who speak to enhance, confirm, build up a certain image, for political reasons, not Raila. And this is why some analysts have been more than a little surprised that Raila Odinga has said something about the recent passing on of lawyer Paul Gicheru at his house in Karen under dodgy, mysterious circumstances. Nobody expected Raila to say anything about the Paul Gicheru Manenos for several reasons. To start with, who was Paul Gicheru? The late Bwana Gicheru was accused by the ICC of witness tampering, something very serious. Indeed, so serious that it carried a 30-year jail term. You see, the ICC were very upset, and so were victims of the 2008 tribal clashes in Kenya. Because in the end, as a result of this witness tampering, people did not get justice. Whoever did the witness tampering, because Paul Gicheru was only accused. He had not yet been found guilty. And of course we assume a person is innocent until proven guilty. And indeed, the narrative of Bwana Paul Gicheru giving himself up to the ICC was to clear his name. Anyway, that was the story behind Bwana Paul Gicheru. So Raila commenting on this issue, it took many by surprise. For others, it fueled the speculations and indeed the belief among some analysts that Paul Gicheru in the end turned out to be a good guy. He was trying to help out the good guys by giving evidence to the ICC to prosecute the really big fish behind the clashes of 2008. That cost thousands of Kenyan lives. Yes, I know the official figure is close to 1,000. But those of us who are around know that that is not true. Anyway, that is the background. That is the scenario. So why did Raila still take time to issue a statement on this matter? And a very serious one at that. Now, I believe the first question we need to ask ourselves is, who was this message addressed to? Because that will help us understand a lot of things. Which audience was this message contained in this statement? Which audience was it targeted at? Now, hold on to that question for a minute and let's look into the content, because I'm sure within the content of this statement of Raila Odinga, it is going to become clearer as to who he was addressing this message to. Now, the long and short of what Raila Odinga said just yesterday was that thorough and credible investigations must be done to ascertain what really happened to lawyer Paul Gicheru and to unravel the mystery behind this very sudden demise of Bwana Gicheru. And in order for this to happen, Bwana Raila's statement is telling us, international security agencies like the Interpol must get involved. Why? So as to avoid a cover-up. That hit me very hard because of the significance of what Raila's statement is saying. What he's saying in very clear language is that if international organizations, international security agencies are not involved in these investigations, there is bound to be a cover-up. In other words, our current government is incapable, not capable of solving this mystery. That is really what the statement was saying. And that is major. Now I can already hear some of us here, especially supporters of this government, saying, Chris, how does he know there will be a cover-up? Why should there be a cover-up? Tuliza Boli. The truth is, mysterious sudden deaths in Kenya have a long history of not being solved. We usually get, Right from independence, we usually get the story. The government will get to the bottom of this. No stone will be left unturned, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, these cases remain unsolved. They remain cold cases. Ukweli ni kwamba kama kuna kesi ya kifo katika hii nchi inaitwa Kenya ambaye inaguzia siasa, haitawahi kusuluhishwa. Yeah, if there's any case involving politics in our dear country, in our dear motherland, the long history tells us it will never be solved. The government will give us all kinds of statements, all kinds of promises, but history tells us in the end it is never solved. Remember the George Thuo case? By the way, which was also linked to the ICC. Has that one been solved? No. Remember JM Karaoke? Political? Has that matter ever been solved? No. Decades later, nothing. Tom Mboya, has that case been solved? Never ever. And in fact, it was very interesting because shortly after the assassination of Tom Mboya, the government released a statement and said, actually the president himself told Kenyans, at that time Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, the first president of Kenya, he had dispatched 100 policemen, 100, maaskari 100, to investigate the Tom Mboya issue and to get to the bottom of it. That's what he told Kenyans. And what happened in the end? A man called Nashon Jenga was brought to court, and prosecuted for that assassination. And he kept on talking about a big man who had sent him. And we were never told who that big man was. To date, and it was a very funny case, no motive. Because if you convict somebody for such a crime, it is very important to establish a motive. So what was Nashon Jenga's motive? Unclear to this day. Pio Gama Pinto, nobody was even brought to trial, still unsolved. By the way, that was the very first political assassination in the history of Kenya. So when Raila says cover up, anybody who understands Kenya must nod their head. Yes, cover-ups are normal in Kenya. And so Raila wants Interpol, these are the international cops, to get involved. And Agwambo even tells us there is a very good reason for this to happen. Because Bwana Paul Gicheru, at the time he left us, was still in ICC custody, officially, because he was standing trial. He had been allowed to return to Kenya under certain strict conditions, but technically he was still in custody of the ICC. And indeed, if there was some foul play here, this would be yet another classic case of witness tampering, assuming that Bwana Gicheru had made a plea bargain deal. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that that is exactly what had happened. I mean, it is so obvious. Even if you read the evidence that prosecutors were using against him, it is so obvious because they keep on referring to the person who was issuing the instructions. And the proximity of Bwana Gicheru and some other individuals mentioned, Kina Meshaki Bey and others, some of them who are still alive, their proximity to that big person who was issuing the instructions. What this means legally, even if there was no plea bargain deal, is that once Bwana Gicheru was found guilty, meaning that the court had accepted the evidence as being proper evidence, then it would mean that what had been used to prosecute Bwana Gicheru successfully would be easily used to get to the big man who was giving Gicheru instructions to do the witness tampering he was doing. I'm sure you get my drift. So it could be witness tampering of ICC witnesses. Perfect reason why the Interpol should get involved. Now, what I find super fascinating, and what I believe you should also find interesting, super interesting, is the fact that there's been no response yet from the government of Kenya. Because think about it. Ordinarily, the government of Kenya should come out and say, what is Raila talking about? Why is he saying that this government is going to cover up things? Why is he saying that this government is not capable of doing a credible and thorough investigation to get to the bottom of this Paul Gicheru manenos? Why is he saying that? We object. This is the government talking. We object to that statement. The government is capable. Something like that. But so far, until the time I came in to do this recording, the Kenyan government is quiet. Wamenyamaza kama mtungi ya maji. So we must assume that it is possible that Raila Odinga was laying a trap for them to speak, say something. That is a possibility. I'm not saying that's what happened, but obviously it's a possibility, because this was a statement issued to the public. And obviously Raila Odinga is a very informed Kenyan. I'm sure he knows a lot, much more than we know, even on this channel. But he chose his words very carefully. He did not say there was any foul play. He just said there should be thorough and credible investigations to establish whether indeed there was some foul play. So, if I may ask, what do you think? Was this a political move by Raila, or was it a non-political move? Tell me what you think, even in the comments area below. In my opinion, it was a political move. It was a political move against the government of William Samoei Ruto. Especially after the very experienced, very capable Director of Criminal Investigations, Bwana George Kinoti, left his job. Now I've said left his job because he did not call a press conference to resign. No. What happened is that President Ruto has told us himself that he has received a resignation letter from Bwana Kinoti, which he has accepted. What? Now look out for another video, which will be out shortly, looking more deeply into that issue of Bwana George Kinoti, because there's a lot there. But for now, this statement of Raila is coming out at a time when even the DCI does not have a boss. Very telling. Because Bwana George Kinoti, its boss, since 2018, has left. He is no longer at the helm of DCI. We are told he resigned. And many Kenyans would be forgiven for assuming that he was asked to resign. Oh yes. Why? Because President Ruto, when he was campaigning, told us many times that Bwana George Kinoti was being used to weaponize the war on graft, the war on corruption. Indeed, the name of Bwana George Kinoti was mentioned many times in UDA rallies. And therefore, it was safe to assume that Bwana Kinoti would not remain the director of DCI under a Ruto government, which is very worrying, not only because of the fight against corruption, but also because of some of the cases Bwana Kinoti has been handling in recent times. Like the case of the Venezuelans found with election stickers. One has to ask, sasa that Bwana Kinoti has left, hiyo kesi kweli itaendelea? Uchunguzi dhidi ya hiyo kesi itaendelea kweli? Will the investigations over the Venezuelans continue? Very unlikely. Because it would seem that Bwana Kinoti may have been used to weaponize the fight for a free and fair election. Oh yes. So let's come back to the question I started with. Who was Raila Odinga addressing? In my opinion, he was addressing, number one, the international community. He was also addressing Kenyans. He was telling us that this Paul Gicheru manenos needs to be thoroughly investigated because there are big question marks surrounding it. He was telling us not to buy the story, the narrative being peddled by the usual suspects, UDA keyboard warriors, not to swallow that narrative that Azimio were involved, and not to swallow other narratives that there was nothing suspicious, or the man had diabetes, or the man was on medication, or he was old. We should not swallow those stories, because they are stories meant to divert us from wanting to get to the bottom of it. We should only accept nothing less than thorough and credible investigations to establish exactly what happened and why. In my opinion, that was the message. In my opinion, there is a brand new political battlefront that this statement confirms. And the battlefront is again between Raila Odinga and William Samoei Ruto. And it is a battlefront which, although the battle is still chini ya maji currently, hard to even notice that it's going on. This may not last long. Okay, and very soon, or sooner rather than later, it will come out clearly for everybody to see. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.